Another spider in Landmark. It'll be too soon.
Hey, Gio. You got
What's up, Tim?
You got something on your shoulder, man.
That's another spider. That's your alter ego. It'll be too soon. I'm digging this Canada sweater. I gotta get one of these. That is cool.
It was the Olympic hoodie for a couple years ago, I think. One of my friends sent it to me.
Oh, awesome.
It's got the little Team Canada logo, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
I remember they had those. Yeah, that's cool.
All right, so
Jealous.
all right, so 3, 2, 1, and make sure I got the right one. There it is. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Landmark, episode 36. We got look who's here. Isn't it cool? Emily's here. All
Happy
right.
Canada Day.
And of course, our other host, Gio, at Landmark Explorer. Is it .com?
Yeah.
It's .com.
Yeah.
And Twitter. And all that kind of good stuff. And we have with us Emily Taylor, a.k.a. Domino, a.k.a. Pentapod, a.k.a. the lady in the red coat. Producer for Landmark and EverQuest Next.
Mm-hmm. One of them. Yeah, Terry as well.
He's like senior producer, right?
He's senior producer. He's more important than I am, yeah.
No. Okay. We've got quite a bit of a little bit of news that we're going to cover prior to us doing the questioning and all that kind of good stuff. So let's hop right over into hotfix notes that came out today that we could talk about, and you guys are going to love this. And it's something that we have been needing for quite some time. Gio, kick us off, man.
What's that note? There's notes right there. There they are. Great day. Happy Canada Day. We brought you a few treats and fixes we didn't think you'd want to wait for. New stuff. All Talkish materials now have reduced artifacting, not just the gold. Yes. Oh, brilliant. I can't wait to see. And note, if you are trying to do something smooth and sculptural, you may now find that the original non-Talkish gold works better for this. So
this is a good question right off the get-go. Are y'all going to be implementing these changes to any of the other materials? Some of the older stuff?
Yes and no. Do you want me to cover this now, or do you want to get through the notes first and then we can discuss? Because there's a slightly longer answer.
Let's go through the rest of the notes.
Okay.
Decorators rejoice. Many additional tints of cloth materials have been added. Fabulous picture. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. That's exciting. Now we just get those things to move and we can make sales. Nothing sales. And this is my favorite, best thing of the whole thing. Rope prop costs have changed. The original versions of ropes once again cost jute to make, 20 each. The newer colored versions of ropes still cost Ember Cup, but have been reduced from 60 to 20 each. So, wow, we can now take advantage of our jute, the piles of jute that Carr and Katina and I bought, and everybody else out there.
It still cost Ember Cup.
But the original ones, it's 20 each.
Yeah, the original color now costs jute. The colored versions of the rope still cost Ember Cup, although less. So that way, if you've got piles of jute, you can use it. But if you went out and harvested like a crazy person for Ember Cup, you're still able to use those.
Oh!
Seemed like the best compromise.
Lousy had his entire guild out harvesting that stuff.
Oh.
It was so
Well,
freaking rare. Oh my God.
That is
can
awesome.
still use it.
Brilliant solution. Thank you.
I totally did not read that like that.
And it says, we do intend to add Ember Cup bundles to the marketplace, yes, in a future update, but didn't make the cutoff for this hot fix.
All right.
Excellent. And bug fixes, dude. I'll leave you with the bugs.
Emily, do you have the notes up?
I can.
That'd be awesome, because you could go over the bug fixes for us.
Alrighty.
Freaking awesome.
They are loading now. Fortunately, you sent me the link earlier. So, all right, bug fixes. So, pasting a hollow shape around another shape, so like putting a empty square around a column or something, was causing some distortion of the interior shape since we added the interior air feature. That has now been fixed. That shouldn't happen anymore. If you do notice it happening, please let us know. But we did test several scenarios we could think about anyway.
That's on the paste volume, right?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Unless, of course, you have place with air ticked, in which case, obviously, it's going to place with air. Also, now when you paste something that has interior air, the interior air is no longer shaded yellow. We thought that was actually going to be a much harder fix, but our amazing programmer, John Cox, found actually a quick way to do it. So we were able to get that in for this hotfix, which we were actually not expecting originally. So awesome. Placing tackish gold materials. I think not all, but some of the tackish gold materials was actually deducting marble in some cases. So we have double checked that it's now all deducting gold.
I never noticed it.
I don't think most people did, but a couple of them were. And we fixed some issues. We had, I know, Loudsy's Guild and a bunch of others have been doing some crazy harvesting, clear cutting, trying to figure out the respawning. And there were still some issues. I think we mentioned in the original post, we know that we want to rework the system. Mm-hmm. But they did find a fairly important bug. So we addressed that. That doesn't mean there aren't other issues. We're pretty sure there are other issues, but it should hopefully be better. At any rate, not worse. So there's that.
It's honestly really awesome that we have enough people that go out there and clear cut a whole entire island.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, we know we're going to rework the system. We posted that in the forum post that I did. So we're probably not going to spend vast numbers of hours fixing the current system when we know that larger changes are coming further down the road. So if you do run out of trees, I would suggest going to another island is probably the quickest solution. I mean, do let us know if there's an obvious problem, but don't expect us to leap out of bed at 6 a.m. on a Sunday and fix the trees. Probably not. But yeah, we're aware there's issues, and we will ensure that does not happen in EQ Next, and hopefully get that fixed in Landmark too at some point.
Awesome.
And then finally, there was an issue since we brought up the Kinos Museum Island. There was an issue that seemed to just randomly crash it from time to time, and we had a heck of a time tracking this down. Mr. Klug was quite mystified, but he finally did figure out what he thinks was causing it. We got a fix in for that with this hotfix. However, there's only a limited number of us, and there's a lot more of you, so it may be a case that if there's hundreds of you guys on the island, there's still something that will happen that will crash it.
Well, can you give us confirmation? Was it Pantera's underwear?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
No, it was not Pantera's underwear.
Okay. I could have swore it was his underwear clogging a pipe or something.
Maybe one time in 10.
Okay.
There was another issue. But yeah, so if you notice that it is crashing on you, please do let us know if that's still happening. And if you remember, if you were doing anything in particular, like clicking on a door or whatever that might be connected every time it crashes, definitely include that information.
Awesome. Well, it is really awesome that you've been able to take the time to come on the show and be a part of this panel. We're going to kind of dive right into our questioning phase and all that kind of stuff right now. It's been a while since we've had somebody come on the show and stuff like that. And you're actually the first developer to come on to Let's Talk Landmark.
Yeah. Thank you.
So much appreciated for that. So I'll toss it over to Gio to start the questions.
Well, the first question I've got on my list is, with the development of the new PS2 engine and the implementation of DX11, that's PlanetSide 2, everybody, and DX11 with it, what benefits can we expect this will bring to the table for EQ Next and Landmark?
Well, Terry kind of discussed this during last week's Landmark Live, actually. Since Landmark and EQ Next are already well under development, we're not going to completely throw that out and start again with the Forge Light 2 engine. However, we're going to take what we can from that and incorporate it into what we've already got built where it makes sense. Initially, those things mostly aren't going to be directly visible to you guys. They will mostly be things like improving performance and making our development pipelines more efficient. But we'll definitely be watching as they develop that engine, and as we continue to develop our games, we'll be looking at opportunities. If it makes sense, we will do it. If it doesn't, then we won't.
Would this open up the ability to do pretty much things that couldn't be done prior with the DX9?
I'm not aware of any massive changes like that. It's more going to be efficiency, and this also kind of goes into the next question I think you had, which was directly related to DX9. But most of it is going to be more performance related. So, for example, if we manage to improve frame rate massively through changes, either through the DX11 upgrade or through any of the Forge Light changes, that does mean we can use that frame rate improvement to put in more crazy stuff, which we couldn't if we hadn't done that. It's not necessarily stuff we couldn't have done with the old one. It's just now we may have a better performance that allows us to do that, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better answer on that.
And I specifically asked Steve as well, what are the major differences we would see going from DX9 to DX11? He is the technical expert, not me, on that one. And he's involved in all the work that's already going on along that path. And yeah, that was basically what he said. DX11, the main difference it makes is it allows us to use more of your graphics card to improve performance. And he apologized, and he said he's sorry he couldn't think of anything more sexy to say. So I asked him to be more sexy, and then HR came in, and that's where we had to end the conversation. So there you go.
I did not see that on Heard in the Office.
I did actually tweet that.
Did you? Oh, I missed it.
Brilliant. Don't think our HR department reads Twitter.
Oh, how dare me? I missed that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we'll skip right over number 2 in our list because she just answered.
Well, let's do that one anyway because that's a. I won't say it. Okay, yeah, I won't ask that one anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
What are the major differences between DX9 and 11 platforms that pushed this change at this stage in the game's development? I guess it could have already been answered in the first one, but yeah.
Pretty much was like, it's just this will have a big impact, or so we hope, on the performance. And I know that a number of people, especially ones who don't have the top of the line machines, are seeing issues with frame rate in some cases. So we hope, that will improve that kind of issue.
Awesome. Okay.
But yes, nothing sexier to say.
That's quick and easy. So, Gio, next.
All right. With the emergent AI and dungeon mastering, what has been your biggest challenge in getting this implemented?
Basically, it's just the amount of time and work that it's going to take to do these right, even for just a first test that people can start playing with. It's a huge task. It involves doing things that haven't been done before, probably in any game the way we want to do them, and certainly not by us. So it's going to take a lot of time from designers just to figure out exactly what we want and how we want it to work, from coders to make it happen, and from artists to make it, assets for it, and as well as to make the UI and make it all look intuitive and pretty. We are going to need to figure out how to implement that in our current infrastructure, and also make sure that it's fun and easy to use and all that good stuff, and make sure that we have the ability to adjust it and tweak it as you give your feedback and as we play with it. So on its own, this is a massive system. It could take months and months and months of work. And we do have a lot of other things that we need to prioritize first, like combat and fairly important things like that. It's definitely still a very important part of the game in our minds, but it's probably not going to be one of the first ones that you see.
So is it going to be a key component of EverQuest Next? Because you have dungeon mastering as a feature of EverQuest 2.
That's a much more simplistic system than what we're hoping to have in Landmark. And yes, it would be applicable to both of the games. Again, part of that is going to come down to how we design it and how that design integrates it into one or both of the games. So a lot more work needs to be done before we're even ready to talk about that kind of detail. Okay. But definitely still on the table. We're very excited about the possibilities if we can pull that off.
Awesome.
Could be awesome.
It's such a big aspect of what we've been looking forward to down the pipe for Landmark, because of the potential to make games with it. So that's a whole nother show.
All right. So next is what is the most difficult challenge you've encountered while building Landmark as a whole?
Well, that's going to depend on who you ask. Definitely.
Fair enough.
But I think overall, and especially from the engineering point of view, it's just having a voxel-based world. That's something that really we haven't seen in any world before, certainly not in any MMO. It's something that really hasn't been done. And what it means is that the world is constantly changing, which you know, but when you think about it, what that means is that the game has to keep sending the current state of the world to the player. So instead of like a traditional MMO where the world doesn't change, maybe there's a few monsters wandering around that change, but you know, the actual landscape doesn't change. So you can load that up once when you patch and you never have to think about it again, never have to download another bit of data about that. In Landmark, your terrain could completely alter. So that has to constantly be sent to the player. And that's going to affect a lot of things like not only performance and download, words are failing me. Quantity you're downloading. Bandwidth, that's the word. Yes, thank you. But also things like if monsters are pathing around, then constantly they have to be adjusting to the fact that the world could literally be changing underneath them. And that's not a trivial problem. So all of that stuff, it introduces more problems than you'd probably initially think when you think, oh, I can dig a hole. That's really cool.
Awesome.
I bet the stuff excites Steve Klug, though.
Of course. He likes the challenge.
Was that particular, that particular issue one of the reasons why the reduction of the number of islands?
I don't think that was related.
Okay. Well, that answers the question right off the get-go. That's great.
Thank
Next.
you.
Geo.
Are the Voxel Forge and the Voxel Editor still on the drawing board?
Yes, they are still on the drawing board. We know you still want them, and we still want them, and they would help in many cases of building cool stuff. They are not. They're lower priority than the things that we're working on at this moment, like combat. So we are eventually going to get to them, but it may not be this year.
Okay. All right.
They are also things that will require a fair amount of design and code and testing.
Okay. And off to number 6. I know you guys are working hard on trying to get larger islands figured out. What bumps in the road have you experienced thus far?
So this is kind of an interesting one. And I confirmed this with Terry, who sees more into the code side of the Matrix than I do. But basically, it's coming along very well. We have extra large zones up and running, and player characters can run around on them. So from that point of view, it's great. We have we have a maximum size limit on how big a zone can be. But we can make a large island that is actually contains multiple zones, which are seamless or basically transparent to the player, so you can't tell when you're crossing from one to the other. So we can make it appear to be as big as we want. And this works, as I say, fine for players. They can cross those zone lines. They never know that they've even done it, and it's great. The main problem we're having right now is just working on the NPCs. So currently NPCs only exist in the zone where they spawned. Like, it's kind of like the holodeck, if I can be a little geeky on Star Trek. So a holodeck character is created in the holodeck. It can't leave the holodeck. It doesn't exist outside the holodeck, and our zones are like that. So to have a character, an NPC, that was created within one of our zones completely leave that zone, which is its parent zone, and cross to another zone, we have to actually put in a lot of work to pass all that information about this guy exists, and this is what he was last doing, and this is where he was last going, and this is what he's wearing, and this is, everything about him that the new zone he's heading to has no idea about. So that's the tricky part. That's what we're working on right now. If we didn't have any NPCs, it would be working totally fine. But obviously that's kind of an important part of the game.
I have a picture in my head of an elf on a milk carton. Yeah. Have you seen this? Yeah, okay.
Now, this goes in. This kind of goes in to what Stefan showed about where one group would move into the area of another group. Correct? To take over if you, as a player, did something that affected the world. That migration of one particular type of creature, like a pack of orcs or something like that, where they start migrating to other areas. Does that fall in line with what you were just talking about?
That's not directly related. I mean, it could. If we have an army here in Zone 1 and we want them to march to the castle in Zone 2, then yes, that would be a direct case where we would have to solve this problem before that could happen. But if we just wanted to, I guess, give the impression that that was happening without requiring this exact orc named Bob is this same exact orc named Bob over here, then we could kind of handle that in other ways. For example, Bob over here like goes into his tent, and then maybe Bob over here tunnels out of something from there, and it's really two different gnolls, even though they look the same. So there's ways you could get around that, but for monsters that are actually traveling across the above ground and do need to stay the same, like if they're chasing you, that's more where it's important.
I gotcha.
That makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think next one is yours, Geo. I think it's number 7.
So, wow. So lots of us have asked for a monetary system, an ecosystem, an economy in Landmark, and other things like crafting specializations. Does this fall in line with what you guys as developers are envisioning for the future of Landmark?
Well, we definitely do envisage some kind of monetary system that could be added in the future, although it's not actually on the schedule at this moment. But there's no reason we wouldn't do that, and it's certainly something we've discussed. In terms of crafting specialties, though, we don't foresee any major changes to the Landmark crafting system. In many ways, Landmark already, in my opinion anyway, has a very specialized crafting system. If you consider building in voxels to be crafting, which basically like making stuff is the fundamental basis of crafting. In that sense, you can literally imagine and make anything that you want already in Landmark. So anything we could add as a crafting system seems like it would be almost a step down from that in some ways. You don't want to like just standing at a crafting station and clicking a recipe like, older MMOs might do. It's not really as exciting in many ways as just building anything you want to out of voxels. And you could already sell all that stuff too. That said, in EQ Next, we are going to be developing a crafting system. And as we develop that and as we look at that and see what makes sense, it's possible we could consider some aspects of that going into Landmark, but it's not something that we're currently planning on right now.
Well, we have quite a few people that's within our community or whatever that's kind of what they like to do is go out and mine. And that's pretty much all they like doing. They really don't get into the building aspect of things. They just like going out there and swinging that pick. I guess kind of what that question is kind of geared toward is, what can they do with the materials, just to kind of give them something to do, I guess.
Yeah, an example that we were thinking of is like the crafting system in EverQuest and EQ2. You had people that would specialize in making really hard to get armors. So if
that's probably how we should have geared that question, was just specializations more than
So like let's say Ferdburfel is going to be your go-to guy to get the hardcore top tier axe through, because he spent a lot of time going through whatever it takes to get the achievements to be able to craft the best axes in the game, or lousy in his guild, for example. And then someone else, the same thing with armor and the different tools that we use in the game.
Yeah, Ferd is like a digaholic, and then you got Lousy's group, who's a chopaholic. They like chopping trees down. That's their thing, So honestly, if a person chops down 20 million trees or whatever, then if they got some kind of a bonus of some sort for that, would be kind of cool. I guess you could do that through the achievement system.
You could do that through the achievement system, and I mean, it's, I think, a separate question of making crafting specialties is a separate question to having stuff to do with the stuff you dig up. Like, you don't need specialties to give you guys a bunch more stuff to make with those recipes. So they're not entirely the same question.
Yeah, true. Very true.
And I mean, I know you're probably aware that I did most of the crafting system in EQ2. I'm very familiar with that, but that is a very different game from Landmark. There's much more of a vertical progression, as we call it, in EQ2, which might not make everything quite equivalent in Landmark. So,
Well,
I said, we'll be thinking about it as we develop EQ Nexts, but it's not
I mean, we're
something we
there's
think is
the question.
urgent.
Right there's the question, though, for Landmark. Do you guys envision a vertical system for Landmark? Or do you see the gameplay as being different?
We have always talked about more of a horizontal progression for Landmark.
Yeah, and
certainly not EQ2's kind of like get to level 90 and you've won sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
That's
and
not
we like that. It's one of the nice things about Landmark is that you can jump right in with a horizontal progression. It's whatever it is you like to do, you can go do.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is plenty of room to give you more rough and chop stuff and mine stuff. No argument there. I don't think it requires having specialty sword makers, but we'll consider it.
I guess you just opened up the can of worms there. Can I get bunnies to bash their brains in? Sorry, I'm after them critters.
Violent child.
Okay, let's go on to the next.
Yes, that's a Toronto Maple Leaf shirt to answer chat. It was getting hot in the hoodie.
All right, on to the next question. It's my question, right?
Yeah, it's you.
Okay. Can you give us an idea of what you see this game evolving into over the course of the next 2 years?
It's going to continue to be the area where we test out ideas and thoughts on what we're going to use in EQ Next. Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to improve the building and content generation experience as we build that for EQ Next. We've said this before, and it's still the same answer. We're building towards EQ Next, and we'll add things to Landmark as they are available and appropriate to throw over the fence.
Awesome. Geo.
All right.
Tag.
Back on August 7th, guilds were implemented, and since then, we've not had any improvements to this system. Can you give us an idea of what you guys would like to see the system evolve into for guilds in terms of functionality in the game? And could we possibly get a last login date added so that we know when people have not been in for a long time and can punt them to make room for others?
Well, if you didn't have such a darn large guild, Tenma. Biggest guild in the game still, I think. Okay, well, guilds are definitely a feature we're going to want for EQ Next. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. They're very important for most MMOs. We're going to be making lots of improvements to the basic system that we put into Landmark early on. And we should be able to move most, if not all, we'll see, of those systems over to Landmark as they get completed. It's not something we'll be working on before the core systems, like having stuff to fight, but it is something that will be coming for EQ Next. And I think we can pretty much guarantee that is going to happen. So that, probably next year, I would guess, we need to have stuff for guilds to do before we have guilds.
Last login date?
Last login date. So it sounds like it's something that would be easy to do, I know. And it might be. So we will definitely look into it. It entirely depends on whether that information is actually being saved at all. It could be that that's not something we're even saving, which means it's not necessarily going to be easy to add that. On the other hand, if it's something that is already saved somewhere and we just have to pull it out and show it in the UI, it could be very easy. So we will have to look into that. Once we have the answers to those questions, we should be able to give you a better idea whether we could add that. We would like to, but we're also not going to derail a programmer for 2 days just to add that. Honestly, that's the answer.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, so back to me, I guess. From the developer side of things, what do you see as the biggest draw to the game, and what do you see as the biggest obstacle to entice more players to play the game?
Well, I think it's kind of the same answer for both, interestingly. So it's the freedom to make absolutely anything you can imagine. And this community has shown that you guys can make absolutely mind-blowingly amazing things that we didn't even know you could make using the tools we've given you. That really attracts people who like creativity and pushing those boundaries and all that stuff. So I think that is definitely a big draw for people who like that kind of gameplay. On the other hand, I think it can also be the biggest obstacle to enticing more players into the game. Not everyone is drawn by that, and it can be a little daunting for a new player to come in and see something that Fugazi had built and go, oh, good God. So we are working to make the tools more intuitive to address that, and we are trying to make that new experience a little less daunting, and things like adding the starter homes were a step towards that, so you can immediately have a home to feel at home in, and you can see some examples of different things you can build, and hopefully it inspires you to try at least adding an extension, if not building your own from scratch, and so on.
Now, who did those?
Our internal team made those starter homes, so I did a couple, and our art team also participated. So we didn't have a lot of time, so it was really like, hey, who's free and would like to build some starter homes? And
So
Tag
I have got anecdotally, I'm seeing people take those starter homes and make really cool stuff out of it. They're swapping out all the materials, just they're kind of redesigning them, but they're using that to get started. So
Somebody turned that warehouse into Ghostbusters.
nice,
awesome.
nice.
That was
So,
cool. I saw
The
that.
warehouse, yeah. That
So-
was made by Michelle Schad. She's one of our special effects artists, actually, and I really like that one. And I know the
Awesome.
Castle Tower. I made that one. That was specifically a request from Darren. He wanted a castle tower that he could then use to make a bigger castle. So that's a great example of that.
Awesome.
So I'm glad
Wasn't-
to hear you've seen that too.
But that was like the thing for the beginning of the alpha. Remember, Dave's story was build a tower, put it on Player Studio. Someone buys that, makes a castle with 4 of those, and then anyway, it was a great story. But we are seeing people take those starter homes and swap out all the materials on them and use them to make other stuff. So wow, I think job well done.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad
Really
to hear
good.
that. And sometimes it just helps to give someone a starting point to just let them move on from there.
Was
So,
Michelle
yeah.
was Michelle one of the ones that did the Japanese style?
No, that was actually a template that I had streamed making that long ago on my own Twitch stream. And so when we were just trying to get some in quickly, I was like, oh, well, I have this from a long time ago. Could you use this? I'll just repaint it to be all starter materials. And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? Add another option for people.
It looks good. I love the Japanese one. I like Oreo and things anyway. So okay. I think Gio, you're up next.
Yeah. Wow. So this gets to what's going on in Landmark. Movie making, machinima, filmmaking. So we've been working obviously on this movie called Landmark's World's End. And while making the movie, we just thought of a lot of cool things that could be added, hopefully, to enhance this whole idea of movie making or machinima, which is, I think, one of the best promotional vehicles for promoting any kind of game out there. People go in and they make these incredible movies. So have you put any thought into enhancing that, adding some features that would help the machinima and filmmaking folks?
Yeah, absolutely. We've always thought the Landmark would be a great platform for that machinima type stuff. We had a lot of very early conversations about it. And we definitely would love to continue building on that, and we expect that we will. We fully expect that systems like SOE Emote, I'm not actually sure what we're calling it now, Daybreak Emote, I guess.
It's Break Face.
We'll get into Landmark as soon as they're ready. They're both lower priority right now than key features like combat that we just really need to make sure they work, but they are definitely things that will be coming to Landmark, and while I don't have a time frame, we want to get them to you as soon as we can, for sure.
So things like, I'm curious, is something like making your character invisible to you when you're in third person and filming, is that something that is technically not too complex to do, or does that require a lot of engineering?
It kind of depends on how we do it. Usually the answer to most of this type of question is doing it a really hacky and not necessarily easy to use and potentially buggy way is easy. Doing it in a smoothly and well-implemented way that has a great UI and is very intuitive is usually a lot more work. It's probably true for every feature in a game. So it's stuff like that are definitely things that we are going to be discussing. And I'm certain that some of them are things we'd love to add, but we're going to have to look at each and figure out, how much work it's going to be and how much would it add and how many EQNext features will get canceled because we spent our time doing this.
Well, we were actually discussing it. Y'all put out that little thing for, what was it, April Fool's Day?
Mm-hmm.
The little thing that changed your screen, made it look
Retroizer, yep.
Retro.
Yeah.
That kicked off a discussion between Gio and myself that it would be kind of cool if we had in-game filters like that we could swap in and out while we're doing our recording, and that would be like another bonus thing on top of, the machinima stuff. You'd be able to, have blood drip down your screen or something. I don't know. It's I don't know, idea. All right. So carrying on to
real quick, one last thing I have on this is the slow bobble flight. So when you're on a claim where you have perms and you can use a bobble to fly around, would it be easy or possible to give yourself the walk speed that you have if you hit the period key and you're on the ground walking, so that you can move slowly as opposed to the normal speed? Is that?
I'm sure it's doable, but I'm not a programmer, so I'm not going to say yes, it would be easy. I'm sure it's doable, and it's certainly one of those features that we will discuss and see.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, number 12. When it comes to the surface of the world, many of us seem to think that it's a bit barren. Has any thought been put into bringing wildlife into Landmark?
Yes. Oh, did you want a bigger answer? Yes, we would all love to see more critters running around the surface. No argument there, other than just fungi. Although fungi are fun. But there's a few things to keep in mind here. First of all, there's quite a big difference between a simple critter like a bunny, which isn't going to be involved in combat, probably, except for the person in chat who wants to kill them. But, theoretically, something that doesn't have to have combat animations, etc., that isn't going to wear clothes, that doesn't have to equip a weapon, so bunny. And there's a difference between that and something a lot more complex, like a cowator, which one would hope would wear clothes and could equip weapons and may be involved in combat and would need like a whole bunch of additional animations. Are you okay, Tenma? You look like you're suffering. You can stop now.
Ogre Snot, she is calling you out.
I am calling him out. I just needed an example of a more complex creature, and what could be more complex than the cowator?
Cowator snails on the surface. Oh my God.
So no cowators in EQNext. No, that is not a confirmation. So I talked to our lead character artist, Casey, who is a wonderful, wonderful lady, and she gave me a couple breakdowns of timing on how long it actually takes to make either a little critter like a bunny or a more complex combat critter like a cowator or a knoll. So I can give you those numbers if you want to count on your fingers and figure it out.
Sure.
Oh, all right. There's a lot of detail here, but if you want technicalities.
Yeah, well, you know what? The community craves this kind of stuff.
I figured. So for a bunny, so we get about a day to do a concept. What do we want the bunny to look like? Do just, the kind of stuff that we've contracted Jinsan to do for buildings. We would get a character concept artist to do for whatever the bunny was or whatever. Then an artist would do a low poly model. So that's a low number of polygons. Basically, it's going to look real blocky. It's going to just be sort of the general shape, but it's certainly not going to look pretty.
So that'd be 2 days, right?
That would be 2 days up to now, yes. One for each. One for the concept, one for the low poly model.
All right.
And that's the first time that it is modeled in 3D.
Okay.
And then we have to do the sculpt. This can take 2 to 3 days, and depending on the size and complexity. This is done in a program called ZBrush for us anyway. But this is where we actually sculpt all the details of what we would want. It's kind of almost like making a clay model of it, so we know what every little detail looks. This is where we would add like fur and whiskers and muscles and like all those good details that make something look really real.
Okay.
We then have to go back to the low poly model and retopologize it, which means basically we're adjusting that original chunky, blocky, low poly model so that it will fit to the beautiful detailed sculpture that we made. And the sculpture is really just to get those surface details. And that's another 1 day. The next step is to do the texture. So the texture, basically it takes the details that we sculptured in our beautiful sculpture and it applies them to the low poly model. So where you might have, say, a loincloth of a cowator, it might be like a triangle. It's very few polygons, which will render very quickly and have great performance when you look at it. The original sculpt is way more detailed than that. To render that fully in polygons would be like millions, literally millions of polygons, which would bring most people's computers to a screaming halt. So what we do is we translate the sculpture into a texture that looks like it's got a lot of detail, but doesn't actually have them in individual polygons. This is kind of like if you go out for Halloween dressed as Spider-Man, you've got like abs drawn on with paint. They're not really abs, but it looks like abs if it's done well, right? It's like that. So we're taking the sculpt of Spider-Man's abs, we're turning it into a texture that looks like abs, and we're sticking it on the low poly model, which is you. That makes sense.
Yeah, Geo would go out for Halloween like that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So that is the texturing stage.
She doesn't judge. She doesn't judge me.
I don't.
Texturing stage. How many days does the texturing stage?
That's like 2 days for something simple like a bunny.
Okay, so we're at like 8 days right there. That's
Yep.
taking up a lot of people or a lot of one person.
Yeah. And it's
right
typically several different people, but in total of man days, we're adding up. So then they'll add some color as they do the texturing. But typically, our design team will say, well, we want a giant that looks, or a gnoll that looks, or a cowator, or whatever. Chomper is a great example. We want a chomper that looks at home in all of the biomes. And you'll notice we have lots of different colors of chompers that work well in the desert. And the one in the desert is going to look a little silly if he's in the snow and so on. So we need different tints of that to be appropriate to what environments you might find them on. And it might not be in every biome or every area of EQ Next. That won't exactly have biomes the way Landmark does. So, but to make it look appropriate, we make different tints of it. That's another half a day or so, depending how many they want.
So I'm assuming the next phase after that would be working on the animation.
Exactly.
To make it look right.
Exactly. So the next one is we have to build a custom skeleton, not like actual skeleton like you and I have, but so that it knows where the joints are and where the polygons of the model, like in the arm, maybe I've got a little polygon intersection here, a vert is what they call it here. It has to know that if my joint goes like this, then it needs to move as well. It like adds the weight to it, and it knows what distance that it keeps from the joints as the model moves. That can take a day. And then we build the control rig. This is what our animation team does, one of the things they do. And that is making sort of like connecting together the joints to understand how the whole thing moves. So we know we've got a joint here, and we've got a joint here, and we've got a joint here, but the control rig tells you like how they all move in relation to each other. So now if I'm animating, I can just pull the arm out, and I know how the rest of the arm is going to move. I can drag my elbow out and know how the rest of my arm is going to come along with it. That takes another day. On to page 2.
So we're in like 10 days already.
So would you have to get a rabbit to wear this control rig?
It's not worn exactly. It's just like a way of linking the joints together in the back end. If that makes sense. If you look at some of our old building blocks videos of how we showed some of the monsters that we created, you may see some of these stages if you look through those. So I would suggest if you're really interested, go through and slow those down and look through.
That's pretty awesome.
Next, we have to test that.
That's a lot of that's a lot of in-depth stuff right there, right off the get-go. So
we're still going. So next we have to test that animation rig, the control rig. So this usually takes another day. We've got to put the thing in the game and run it around and try and do like all sorts of movements and make sure that it works. And especially if you've got something with multiple legs like Spider, your favorite Geo, we got to make sure that the legs are all working together and they're coordinating and if I pull this leg out, that one doesn't move, and make sure that it works the way they want it to, appropriate for that animal, and that can be different for every animal. That's a day. Then we need to do, this is the big part, we need to do the whole set of animations. So what we did to this point is just really how the joints connect. But now we need to tell them what they should do. So what is a bunny going to do? Something like a bunny doesn't do a lot of sophisticated stuff. So it's going to have a fairly basic set of environmental animations, but it's got to do stuff like walk forward, walk backwards, turn left, turn right, fall over, an idle animation. It's got to maybe have a death animation.
The wait for Tenma to hit me pose.
The wait for Tenma to hit me pose.
A run to the left, a run to the right.
Yeah. Because, it's got to have that. And it might also need a walk to the left, walk to right. So, I mean, those alone, there's like 10 or so right there. And then a bunny might have some custom ones like kicking behind his ear or like eating a carrot or, whatever, that add realism to the world. Because if you don't have that, if you've just got a bunny that sits there like totally rigid until you do something to it, it's, why would you even make that? It breaks immersion.
We call those voxels.
So
there you go.
So I'm assuming like you would have like a day per animation. And it varies depending on the size of the creature and what complexity that creature has in the world.
Yeah, so Casey said that for something like a bunny we might be looking at around 20 animations, and that would be between 2 to 4 weeks typically. So it's definitely adding on those days.
Wow.
Then we need effects.
Oh yeah,
still more. So effects are stuff that again, add more realism. So like when the bunny hops, there's little puffs of dirt under the feet, or it sheds fur, or it sneezes, or something like that. If it's a magical creature, maybe it's like sparkles or drifting leaves that fall off a tree ant, or things like that.
And I know what Tim was thinking, bunny poo.
No, I'm thinking of splat. That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
so
with that, and so that really, wow.
That actually,
I'm not done yet. I'm still going.
Come on, bring it.
So the effects added another day, and then you have to do the sound. So we have to record all the sounds or find them from libraries we have already, add the sounds, hook up the sounds so they play in the appropriate places for the animations, and that's another day to 2 days. So by my calculation, that is about 24 to 48 days just for Bunny.
Whoa.
And correct me if you've counted different, but that's what I counted up quickly on my hands before this.
That is...
yeah,
that's over. That's you're talking. If you had one person and that's all they did, and they stuck to that timeline, they'd only get like 11 creatures made in a year.
All right.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Wow. And that's just a bunny.
It's
and
just
we ain't talking about the big stuff.
So we're talking about the big stuff. We add more time, obviously. Mostly it comes in the animations, because now it doesn't just need its like run left, run right, fall over.
Yeah.
It needs all of its different attack moves. It needs any special like talking to you animations, or looking aggressive, or getting knocked to their back if you stun it, or like anything like that. So that could be 1 or 2 months for a complex tool user like a Null.
So can you guys publish these specs and invite the player community to have a crack at some of this?
Well, unfortunately, it's not really something that's easy to open up to players right now. I mean, that's some of it. If
someone's got the software at home, a group of people have the software because they've been in the industry or they want to moonlight and do some stuff. Could they complete the different components and get those files to you for?
It's not unthinkable that we might be able to contract like we did for Jinsan for concepts. And in fact, that is one example of where we have contracted out one step of this process. Mm-hmm. It's not something that we're currently doing. We have enough people to handle what we want at this point. But we may be hiring more people, or we may look at contracts. I don't know at this point. But yeah, it's a lot of specialized people work on it, and it's not one person from beginning to end. It's a team that pass it along the pipeline.
Right.
But yeah, and then the Null, for example, or Kawator would probably take 2 to 3 months, depending how complex it is.
5 years.
And really,
each udder would do like this. So
That's true.
Each one would be its own.
All right, we've confirmed no Kawator.
All right,
but yeah.
And
so hopefully,
the months really just converts to man hours.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
man hours.
Exactly.
Shoot, yeah.
So it doesn't mean that it would take 3 months to make a Null, but it means that it's that many man hours that's going to be working in parallel. We would probably get multiple models in a 3-month period, but yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of resources.
All right. Well, I'm looking at time frame, so I want to go ahead and push on to the next question, if you would,
Okay.
Gio, number 13.
Yeah. What are the systems and features you hope to bring to Landmark in the second half of 2015?
Well, we kind of discussed this again on last week's live stream, but since we're focusing on EQ Next development, the things we bring into Landmark in the second half of 2015 are going to be things that we're working on for EQ Next if they're applicable. We're going to continue to fix important bugs, as you've seen in the last few hotfixes.
Okay.
going to continue to add new materials and props. But the pace, as we've said, the pace of adding new big features to Landmark is going to be pretty slow this year because we are going to be testing and iterating features for EQ Next. Exactly how long those are going to take is definitely going to depend on how good it feels when we play with it and how many iterations we have to do. So it's a little hard to give you time frames on when we're going to be working on stuff that might come into Landmark. We will definitely let you know as soon as we do, because we're as excited to get you the stuff as you are to get it. But asking, are we there yet, isn't going to make it happen any faster, I'm afraid.
If there's ways that the player community can
we will absolutely
assist,
let you know if
let
there
us
is.
know.
That's the next.
Sure.
That's the next question, which is most of our viewers are very interested in how they can help further the two games development. What can they as testers do to help you reach the goals you're hoping to achieve in general?
Well, basically continue the things that you're doing now. Continue to help us build EQ Next by participating in the workshop shows, finding the issues in Landmark, and especially as we do introduce new things into Landmark, help us confirm that they work, that they're fun, things like that. Unfortunately, while we actually create the new systems and iterate on them, there may not be a lot that you can do immediately. But whenever we do have those new features or systems, we'll definitely bring them out to you and we'll ask you to help us with them.
Awesome. Number 15.
Which game do you think will be live first, EQN or Landmark? But legitimate question, though.
Flip the coin.
I'm curious. What do you guys? What do you guys think should be? If we gave you the choice, what would you choose? I'm curious.
To me, logically, it seems like Landmark would be first, and then EverQuest next. But we're curious because originally we just thought that was going to be the progression, but now in our minds,
with the shift of everything over to EverQuest Next, it seems like Next is probably something you wanting to push out prior to Landmark being finished.
Okay. Well, I mean, I see a comment in chat, which is very true. Landmark will never be done, and EQ Next won't either. MMOs are never done. Like they're still updating EQ1, and how old is EQ1? Yeah. I mean, it's still awesome.
We were talking about that today.
Yeah. But if we mean leaving beta and actually officially launching, currently we are thinking it will probably be Landmark. But as we continue to develop both games, it's possible we could change our mind based on what makes sense. But that is our current thinking.
Okay, so
thank you.
I think you can make arguments for both sides, so we'll see how we feel next year.
Well, and for the first time in the last month, I've started to see those arguments for both sides, and so to me, it was an honest question that a lot of people are asking.
Okay, so number 16, you tried some tweaks to make the Takish materials artifact less. What's the plan for doing this to more materials in the future? And if you remember, we started that at the beginning of the show.
Yes, and I actually have a little sneak content peek for you here that was a bonus that I didn't tell you about because we didn't know if it would be ready. Right. But okay, so as you know, we first applied the changes in the artifacting only to the Takish Gold because we didn't want to apply it to all the old stuff in case it broke something. It's very hard to find all the stuff, all the different ways of building in Landmark because goodness knows you do some crazy stuff. So we rolled it out just to Takish Gold. You personally do some crazy stuff, Tenma. I've seen your tutorials. Looking
My
at
eyes
you.
crossed.
See, you're making me blush. I'm blushing.
Crossed.
Stop.
Awesome. I win the stream. But so we did get some reports back. People were saying the Takish changes are amazing for angular and geometric shapes, which is much of the Takish builds. But the people who are building things like sculptures noticed that they had some bad, like bumpy appearances. It didn't work very well for smoothed builds for sculptures and so on. So we didn't want to roll those out to the existing metals because it would break things that people have made in the past, like beautiful statues. So what we're going to do today, or what we actually did today and we didn't tell you about in the hotfix notes, is we added a new version of each existing type of metal that's...
Yes!
So this looks very similar to the existing metals.
Thank you, brother. Wow.
It just is a sharp version.
We've been wanting that forever with most of our materials, especially the bleeding and the non-bleeding type stuff. And that right there,
Now, the reason we took that out of the hotfix notes is when we tested today while the servers were down, the icons are broken. They all have black icons, which is why you have not noticed that they're there, because they just look black. If you actually do a search for edged, you'll find them. We're going to try and fix the icons tomorrow morning, and then we'll officially announce they're there. But this is your sneak peek for watching this stream. You can start using them now. Sorry about the icons.
There was some other icons that were still in the palette. I believe it was the wood with the fancy grain on it.
Yeah, I mentioned that to Alan. He was going to take a look at it. It's kind of gray right now. We'll get those icons fixed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So Edge should bring those up, and if not, tomorrow it should be fully fixed.
Awesome. Geo17. I can't hear you.
Thank you. Can you give us an update on Paste with Interior Air feature?
Yeah. So this past week, I guess it was, time has been flying. This was our first implementation of the interior air feature. We already fixed a couple of bugs in today's update, like seeing it in the paste preview and the not pasting properly around other things. But we are going to keep iterating on it, and there'll be more improvements to come. We hope to have another update to pasting with interior air in the next month or so. And that should be a little smarter about handling interior shapes like L joints and so on. So we'll see how that goes. Probably in the next month, but maybe two. So, don't scream if it's not by the end of July. But that's the plan.
And that's where you guys come into play to help make the tools better.
Yeah, thank you for all the feedback so far. I've been passing it on to the coder who's been working on that, and he's been very grateful. Awesome. Especially like screenshots and specific examples.
There was a specific screenshot by Shatari showing a vehicle, that little craft he'd made, and with the metal where the artifacts had been removed and the old one, and that really struck a chord for me. Anyway,
cool.
Very beautiful. Okay, number 18. Do you have a big enough team to make the game happen?
This is one of the questions from the forums. Yes, absolutely we do. And that's what Terry and Darren and Steve and a lot of the leads spend a lot of our time doing, planning out the schedule so we know exactly how much time we do need to make the game with the team we have, and whether we're going to need to hire more people, like to make your bunnies. If we want more bunnies, then we need to hire more artists. If we can cut bunnies, we don't necessarily need to hire more artists, so we're doing all that planning.
We got to have bunnies.
Gotta have bunnies. I don't know.
Just something to whack on. Make them snakes. It'll be all right.
So as we plan that schedule out anyway, and as we prioritize things like bunnies versus cowators, which we're not going to get, we'll know whether we need to hire more people, or maybe we may be able to borrow from other teams. Like if H1Z1 is in a quiet period, we may be able to borrow a couple of their artists, and that's something that does sometimes happen. Okay. So we're also, at the moment, we're hiring programmers. If any of you listeners are programmers, please visit our website, daybreakgames.com, look in the careers section, and send us your resume. And keep your eye on that. We may hire other artists, designers, whatever in the future, depending on how it turns out as scheduling looks.
All right. We can't hear you, Geo. Mr.
Quick question on that. Which type of jobs are you hiring for where people can work remotely?
None. And I'm sorry to say that, but at the moment there are not any jobs I'm aware of listed where you can work from home. It's quite important to be able to be on site and interacting with people directly in many cases. That's not to say there might not ever be some. For example, contract indigence would be an example of that. But in most cases, there's so much interaction and back and forth that we do look for people on site.
Right.
Thank you.
Geo, number 19.
What was the Keynote build that Terry showed in his producer's letter?
So that was a proof of concept that we put together. It was really just piecing together some of the Keynote competition winners and a few things that Alan and I and other people had built to see how a city area would look and how the sizes of the buildings felt for gameplay. It's not a final version of Keynote, and it was fairly hastily done, but it was really helpful to see, like, we could actually run along a street and between buildings and into buildings and get groups of people to do that and see how the space felt. So that's what that was.
Knobwinkle went nuts when he saw his lights dangling from the trees.
Yeah, those were very nice lights.
He went absolutely nuts when he saw that.
How many man hours did it take to do that mock-up?
Ooh, I don't know if we were counting, but probably not more than 2 or 3 days, I would guess.
Okay.
So I couldn't say for sure.
Okay, so this kind of gets us really close to the end of the show. So I want to toss it out there to those of you that are in the channel right now. If you have a specific question that relates to what Domino does, you can ask it. Now, if it doesn't fall in line, it ain't going to get answered, okay? So
Cooking.
definitely
Cooking.
we have a few questions kind of popping up as the show has gone along here, and give us a moment. We're going to see what we can pull out for you guys.
Cooking show for sure.
Okay, I got one here, which is I'm not sure who asked the question. There's no name associated with in here, but question: what is the status on dynamic water?
It's something that we're continuing to chug along looking at in the background, but we don't anticipate any sudden announcements of it in the next little while, put it that way. It's something that would be cool. It's something we want, but it's not something that we're pushing as a really high priority right now.
Okay. And Gio, feel free to scan through those questions in TeamSpeak.
Zimnil had a question back there earlier. And Ringgirl's got one. Blue tint at Sunset Fix.
What is helpful for those blue tint questions is specifically what biome you're in. Even a claim location would be awesome so that we can actually look. We fixed the biggest problem, and it was tied specifically to the beach biome. You'll notice the hotfix notes didn't say we fixed all instances of blue. We fixed this instance on beaches. So there may be edge cases. There may be strange oddness in certain biomes at certain times of day where it's still happening. We need to know what time of day and what biome, and we could take a look. I mean, the worst of it is gone, so we're probably not going to kill ourselves trying to track down every little instance at a high priority, but we can sort of log it and take a look at it as time permits.
Okay.
Some biomes do have a blue tint to them, and that may be intended, and we would have to check that with our art team as well.
All right.
Zimnil was asking about a revamp on the templates window. Would be nice having a classification system, tagging them, as in the gallery, for example.
We agree.
All right. I got one here, which is: will there be more starter shapes? In other words, the instead of just like
The primitives?
Yeah, the primitive shapes. Specifically something cylindrical that would help us make those round curves that they've been asking for the Talkish stuff. Would have really come in handy.
So there is a great template out there on Swap Meets, which I'm trying to remember who did it now, and my mind is blank. It may be Fretaless, but I'm not positive. At any rate, it's a series of perfectly fitted together concentric rings in both odd and even sizes. Most of the Swap Meets I've been to have it. I would suggest grabbing that. It is very useful in terms of actually getting them in as starter templates. We're looking at ways to make that whole thing easier, but I also noticed someone mentioning in chat that it's kind of hard to manage the ones we have already. It's not very friendly having them all in your template window. So we are looking at maybe improving the way you access them as well.
See, the one thing is about those particular circles, even if I make a cylinder out of it, when I use it as the cutting piece, all the voxels that I am trying to take out reform to the shape of what it is I use as a cutter.
Mm-hmm.
By having a tool that is like the deletion tool, we would have it to where we could delete something without it deforming, and it would be much like we have now with the line tool, where you could cut out something and it doesn't deform that shape. I think that's pretty much what we're kind of asking for.
If you mean actual brush shapes,
yes,
it's something we have discussed, but it is a lot of work to make entirely new scalable brush shapes. So we may not add those soon. We may, however, be able to add some way of snapping to particular sizes of a shape, like essentially different sizes of a template, but not fully scalable the way the sphere tool is, something like that. We're having those discussions. We've even got a really cool UI mock-up of some ideas of what we might do, but actually getting that in the game is a while off.
Okay. Cool.
But definitely do expect some changes coming eventually.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, the reason why I'm asking is because that was one of the biggest issues we had with the Takish stuff is trying to get that curve right, perfect. And if we use something else to make the cut, everything that we used to try to cut it with, it would always have that type shape
Right.
going up, and because it makes those voxels conform to that whatever
Sure.
shape of those voxels were. Okay.
Sure. Well, I think I can unfortunately confirm you will not be getting this in time for the Tagish competition.
Awesome.
Fair enough.
100% promise on that one. Not going to happen.
Okay, so
Mag Davis has a question. Or Mag Vidas, and that is H1Z1 already has a ton of creatures we would want. Any way you could just grab those models and their animations and retexture them for a landmark?
Without looking at that and talking to the artists, I don't know the answer to that. It is entirely possible that Rosie would not feel they're at all appropriate for our style. They are very different looks and feels of games, but it's also not necessarily always as easy as you might think to take models from one game to the other. But I can't specifically speak to those without asking a lot smarter people than me.
awesome. Okay, so this kind of pulls us down to the end of the show, and we are just a little bit over where we should be, but we are at the end, which is great. And Emily has a little sneak peek for you guys that nobody has seen but me, which is awesome.
I have not seen this.
Nobody's seen it. I have not let it out anywhere. So,
He tried to show me, but he couldn't make it work.
are you ready? And
Yeah, I'm ready.
And Emily, I'll let you
Talk about it?
go talk about what it is I am throwing up right about now.
No?
You
Yes.
won't. Well,
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I see it.
the
Yep.
picture you sent.
Alrighty. Well, Tanma asked if he could get a little sneak peek of something that was coming up. So this is what we sent him, fish. We would like to give you some fish to put in those awesome aquariums you're making. Our special effects artists have been playing around with some small schools of fish that could maybe swim around, kind of like flies that buzz around some of the lamp props. So we could attach them to something like an underwater prop, a kelp or a coral or something, and just have a couple fish slowly swimming around. So we are looking at doing that. We would hope that is something that we could get to in the next couple months. But I thought since the special effects were done, I would show you a quick little preview of that fish. I think it looks great.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
That is awesome. And we have got some people in the stream right now who have fish tanks.
I have a fish tank too.
And they're going nuts over it right now. So that's freaking awesome.
Your fish tank was the first one I saw in Landmark.
I think it was one of the earlier ones. Yeah, the thought is that there'd be a prop you'd place and then they'd kind of like slowly swim in the area of it the way flies buzz around some of those lamp props that you place. But we're gonna need to make that prop and tweak it and so on.
That's okay.
That is awesome. That is so.
There you go.
So
see, you saw the fish, but you didn't know exactly what it was for. So
very true. See, I was thinking ocean. They're gonna be fish in the ocean.
Something to bite your toes. Yeah.
I'm still happy. We got something that wiggles.
Emily, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'm really hoping that this show, with all the questions that we have asked and all the answers that Domino has given, has kind of put a boot in some butt cheeks, for the most part.
Well, that is my legacy for the show. All right. I would like it noted.
Where's Dyfin in a soundboard when we need it?
I would like it noted that I made Tenma blush, so that is my accomplishment for the show.
That's okay. I made you smile. That's all that matters. So, but thank you very much for coming on the show. We definitely would love to have some more developers come on and just kick it with us for a little while sometimes. And most of the time what we're doing is going over y'all's hotfix notes. So it's great to have y'all come up there and give y'all's 2 cents and some of the background information on that. It's really been awesome to have you on, and definitely would love to have you come back on at some point in time.
And please thank Steve and Terry and everybody on the team there who gave you info for the show. Appreciate it very much.
Every one of them. Just pull the whole team in and be like, thank you.
Okay.
From all of us, most of us, we're right behind you for the most part. We're still backing y'all as much as we possibly can. We know y'all are working hard. There are some people out there that doesn't give you as much credit as you're due. And all we can say is thanks. So.
Well, this community is an awesome community, so it was great to be here, and thanks so much for all of your support.
Thank you very much. And with that is the end of episode number 36. Let's Talk Landmark. It's been a great show, and definitely join us next week on Geo's channel, which will be Monday.
Let's Talk Pie.
For Let's Talk Pie.
Why wasn't I invited to that one? Oh my God.
Yeah, you are.
What?
I'm telling you, we're doing a food show.
No, Let's Talk Spiders, and we're gonna pull Sean.
Spider pie.
Let's hide spiders in his pie. You're cruel.
So with that, guys, thanks for joining us. Definitely Monday at 1:30 Eastern will be episode 37 of Let's Talk Landmark. And of course, we have a Monday and a Wednesday show, so we cover everybody, which is great. And with that, guys, have a good one and have a good night. And we'll see y'all guys later.
Go there and build something.
Build something.